The 1995 Buick Riviera has quickly gained a reputation in the automotive world as the concept car that you can actually own. This is in large part due to advanced styling that makes Riviera less resemble a typical production model than it does the one-of-a-kind custom-built cars usually seen only at auto shows. The unique modular body design features one-piece roof rails with MIG-welded A-pillars and a frameless door glass system. The door windows seat directly against the primary weather strip that runs around the door opening. A correct seal between the window and the weather strip is critical in preventing water and wind noise from intruding on the interior. Hi, I'm Chuck McLennan. Welcome to Buick Know-How. In this program, we'll show you how to diagnose and repair window sealing problems that might sometimes arise on the new Riviera. But first, let's take a closer look at the frameless glass system. The weather strip used around the Riviera door is unlike the door-to-body primary seals used on other Buick models. Oh, and by the way, we've removed the side mirror from this car for demonstration purposes. This isn't necessary for seal repairs. For one thing, the seal is molded as a single piece with no bottom joint. The weather strip is tightly secured around the perimeter of the window by this retainer. The retainer itself is attached to the door opening with 12 self-tapping screws. As you can see on this small section, the upper portion of the weather strip, the part above the belt line, incorporates two retaining lips. These lips fit snugly into the retainer channel to hold the weather strip like this. The upper rear corner is molded to fit the contour of the window opening. The portion of the weather strip below the belt line has a different cross-section. It fits over a flange that's part of the lower car body. These two areas, where the upper and lower portions of the weather strip come together at the belt line, are appropriately called the transitions. The transitions are attached at the front and rear of the door opening with adhesive patches. When it's properly positioned, this ledge in the transition should butt to the bottom edge of the retainer. As I'm sure you're aware, problems with noises and leaks are a major cause of service comebacks. That's the reason we've done a number of Buick Know-How programs on this topic. So, when a Riviera owner complains of a wind noise or a water leak at a window, the first task of a service department is to determine the exact nature of the complaint as perceived by the customer. To help you determine the nature and source of the complaint, the Service Consultant's Reference Manual with this program contains a questionnaire that should be completed while the customer is in your store. The illustration in the questionnaire breaks the perimeter of the window into sections identified by letters. Each letter represents a specific location where an inadequate seal might typically cause a wind noise or water leak. Let's look at those locations. Areas A and G are at the belt line or transition areas at the front and rear edges of the window. B is the leading angled portion of the glass that follows the line of the A-pillar. Location C is the top edge of the window along the header. Area D is the upper top rear corner section from the back edge of the glass and about 2 inches forward. E refers to the upper vertical corner from the top of the glass and approximately 2 inches down the B-pillar. Location F is the rear edge of the window along the B-pillar. I indicates the top corner of the vertical leading edge of the window just above the belt line. Location H is different in that it refers not to the window but to the bottom of the weather strip that runs under the door sill. A problem here would typically appear as wet floor carpeting by the door. Use the questionnaire to help you obtain a clear description of the customer's complaint and at least a general location of where the noise or leak occurs. Then, and most important, especially in the case of a wind noise, verify the complaint to ensure that an actual repairable noise condition exists. When a condition is verified, then, the in-depth diagnosis and repair can begin. Although the sealing system is new, the preliminary diagnostic process for pinpointing wind noise and water leaks on Riviera is the same as for other models. For example, in the case of a wind noise complaint, the technician should test drive the car and duplicate the type of driving conditions described by the customer and/or the service consultant. This test drive is most effective when an assistant drives while the technician uses a mechanic's stethoscope fitted with about 4 feet of flexible hose to listen around the glass perimeter. When pinpointing the source of water leaks, a car wash or water test stands can be used for generalized testing. Localized leak tests can be made with a water hose. The Buick Know-How Technician Reference Manual with this program contains a prioritized repair chart. The Riviera Door Systems Engineering Group developed this chart to provide a solid approach for correcting problems. Repair steps for each of the possible leak locations are numbered in order of priority, based on the results of extensive testing by experienced door systems professionals. When using the chart, you should always follow the repair steps in the sequence listed. After each repair step is performed, the car should be retested to check if the complaint condition is repaired. Locations A and G have the greatest number of repair steps listed, so this is a good place to start our demonstration. The number 1 repair step on the chart for these and all of the other locations is to check that the weather strip is correctly installed. This is essential for proper sealing around the glass. Also, if you examine the top of the weather strip, you'll see there's a channel here along the outer edge. The Riviera doesn't have a conventional drip rail on the roof. Instead, this weather strip channel serves a dual function as a seal and as part of the door's water management system by carrying water away from the top of the window. If the weather strip isn't properly aligned in the retainer and against the window, water may build up in the channel and leak into the interior. A powder test is an excellent method for checking the seal between the weather strip and the glass. To demonstrate the correct procedure for the powder test and other repair procedure checks, we're pleased to welcome Ernie Misiak to Buick Know-How. Hi, Ernie.
Hello, Chuck.
Welcome to Know-How. Ernie's had many years' experience working with Fisher Body, both in assembly plants and at Engineering Central. He's currently with the Door Systems Engineering Group in Flint, Michigan, and has been involved with Riviera from the prototype and production startup phases.
Hopefully we can pass on some of the techniques we learned during the start of production and make your job a little easier.
Why don't you carry on with the powder test demonstration, Ernie, and I'll provide the commentary for what you're doing.
Okay, let's do that.
I noticed that you closed the door slowly, Ernie.
Yes, Chuck, if you slam the door, the momentum of the glass hitting against the weather strip will smear the powder and give you a false reading. Close the door slowly and push firmly to ensure that the latch is fully engaged.
When the door is reopened, a good glass seal will be indicated by a continuous trace of powder residue along the weather strip. Irregularities will show as gaps in the powder line, like this. When an irregular powder trace is obtained, the first thing to do is run your thumb along the weather strip, as Ernie is doing, to feel that it's properly seated in the retainer. For example, in this cross-section, one lip is seated in the retainer channel, while the other is sitting out, in which case Ernie would press it back in place like this. Anything else, Ernie?
Yes, Chuck, if after you have verified that this weather strip has been correctly installed, but you can still feel a high spot, well, for example, right here.
Oh, yeah.
That might be a high or a crooked screw, which would have to be replaced. To fix that screw, remove just that portion of the weather strip, then locate and correct the problem screw, and reinstall the weather strip.
The next item, still under repair step 1, is to check the seal patch. As I mentioned earlier, the weather strip is secured to the body with adhesive patches at the transition points. To verify the weather strip is properly positioned, ensure the transition ledge butts against the bottom edge of the retainer as we saw on our display. If the patch is not properly fastened, repair it with a replacement patch or use a good RTV sealant. The second repair step is to check the door mucket installation and lip position. The muckets are these pieces on the front and rear of the door at the belt line. You can see it better off the car. The outer belt strip has top and bottom sealing lips. The mucket lip should fit between these lips and wrap around the glass. A leak may be caused by a condition like this, where the mucket lip does not wrap around the glass properly. Moving on, repair step number 3 is to check the fore and aft glass adjustment. Ernie is measuring between the ridge where the molded drip channel ends and the rear edge of the glass. The distance here should be between 3 and 5 millimeters at the mold joint where this lip disappears. If an adjustment is required to correct this measurement, the trim panel should be removed for access to the fore and aft glass module adjustments in the door. If I may jump out of sequence for just a moment, when you look at the chart, you'll see that in addition to locations A and G that we're currently discussing, checking fore and aft glass adjustment is also a priority repair step for locations E and F along the B-pillar and location I at the corner of the glass. When checking for a leak here at location I, before adjusting the glass, you should ensure the weather strip is not stretched too tightly across this corner. A bridging condition here can cause the glass to catch on the seal as the door is closed. Also, if you need to adjust the glass forward to make a repair, be careful that it doesn't extend too far, where it might catch and fold the seal lip under the front edge of the glass or rub against the A-pillar molding. And after any glass adjustment, slam the door to ensure there's no contact between the glass and the roof rail molding. Slamming the door produces back pressure that causes the glass to stand up slightly, reducing the top clearance. Full glass adjustment procedures are described in the Know-How Technician's Manual and the body section of the Riviera Service Manual. Now, let's continue to the next item on our chart. Repair step 4 for locations A and G is to bend the weather strip retainer. You would use this procedure to correct localized low areas. That's where there's insufficient contact between the glass and the weather strip. Now this would show as a gap on the weather strip when a powder test is performed. Ernie is using a trim puller between the retainer and the body to wedge the retainer outward. How far should you wedge it out, Ernie?
I'd wedge it out no more than 2 millimeters at a time, starting at the low spot, then taper out on both sides so I don't produce a high spot. After that, I'd perform another powder test to check if the low spot is repaired.
And I assume you would repeat these steps until the repair is good.
That's right, Chuck. As you mentioned before, you should retest after every repair step to check if the condition is repaired.
The next repair step, that's number 5, is to reposition the weather strip retainer. This more extensive step is intended to repair a condition where your powder test reveals that the weather strip is not contacting the glass properly along a good-sized area of the lower portion of the B-pillar. To reposition the retainer outward, Ernie is removing the lower 2 self-tapping screws at the B-pillar. When loosened slightly, the screw above provides a pivot point, so the retainer can be adjusted from 1 to 5 millimeters as required to make the repair. When moving the retainer, drill new screw holes through the retainer into the pillar and seal the original holes. And that's all the numbered repair steps for locations A and G. One final step, change the primary weather strip, is marked with an X. The X indicates a possible but low priority repair. For instance, as a final check, you should ensure there are no screws missing from the retainer. In all cases, weather strip replacement should only be done as a last resort when all the other steps have failed or the weather strip is actually damaged. The reason for this is changing the weather strip might very well produce a new leak condition and, of course, a service comeback. Then you're back where you started, and now with a very unhappy customer. Let's look at the repair steps that we haven't covered that are used in the other locations. Assuming the first two steps, the ones we've already discussed, are unsuccessful in repairing leaks at locations C and D along the header, the third repair step is to check and adjust glass height. As the Riviera door is closed, the glass first comes under and clears the roof molding. Then, as the door shuts, the glass moves up and under the lip. The glass should engage the seal to a depth from 3 to 5 millimeters. You can check this specification by placing a piece of masking tape at the top of the window. Then, ensure the window is fully raised. Use a pen to mark the tape along the drip rail molding and measure the result. If the measurement is less than 3 millimeters, remove the trim panel to access the glass module height adjustments. Glass tilt adjustment is another low priority repair that may sometimes be needed to correct sealing along the header at locations B, C, and D. It may also be required at location E if moving the retainer outward does not produce a satisfactory seal. The window glass should press against the weather strip with enough pressure to form a continuous seal. One of the traditional fixes for door sealing that's often employed by technicians is to increase the seal pressure by adjusting the door inward. This technique should not be used with Riviera to adjust glass sealing. Tightening the door inward increases the effort required to close the door. As you know, many people judge the quality of a car by how smoothly the doors shut and how solid they sound. Finally, location H refers to a condition where water is found to be building up along the door sill. Having checked that the weather strip is correctly adjusted, Ernie is checking that the two drainage holes in the bottom edge of the strip are not plugged. If water continues to build up here and the weather strip and drainage holes are okay, check that the water deflector in the door is properly installed on the inner door panel. Ensure that the deflector is fully seated without wrinkles, especially at the bottom half of the door. And that's our last repair step. Thanks for your help, Ernie.
Thank you, Chuck.
Appreciate you coming in. The new Riviera is truly an excellent car, and you surely don't want an owner's satisfaction spoiled by wind and water intrusions. However, as we've just seen, if you carefully verify the complaint, then work through the repair chart steps in order, most problems can be resolved with relatively small adjustments. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next Know How.